Cheryl McQueen, designer with Del Bellas Designs. Today we're going to kind of play around with our scraps. Several of the team members on the Del Bellas Designs team have been talking back and forth about how we keep all of our scraps. I don't know if you're that way or not. I have my nice little box that I just toss all of my scraps into, figuring that there's going to be something that I'm going to be able to do with all of them. So we've talked about what can we do with our scraps. So today I'm going to kind of do a really fast, impromptu kind of little example of what you can do with some of your scraps. I keep all kinds of pieces of scraps. These are the pieces that I use for the artwork, and then I have my scraps that I use just from my cardstock that I use as my background card base or the frame, that type of thing. So we are going to do a really quick demonstration on what you can kind of do with your scraps, as well as show you a way that you can use the Misty sticky mats. So let's start out by talking about the supplies that we're going to use today. Like I said, I'm just going to use some scrap pieces. Here's a couple that I had, and I've gone ahead and cut them down just a little bit to be the shape that I want. You can do whatever you want to get your scrap pieces the size that you want. You can just grab and come up and be creative with what you've got, or trim them down a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to start out by creating our background, and today I'm going to use the Distress inks. I'm going to use pine needles, peacock feathers, and the Kitsch Flamingo. For stamping, I'm going to just use one stamp today, and we're going to go with the Tree of Hope. This one is LAV 658. So when we do our design, we're going to want to be able to get our layers to line up nicely. And so the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to demonstrate how you can use the Misty sticky mats. I actually did another video tutorial on this and showed you some ways that you can use them, and here's going to be another way that'll help you with your layering. When we put it all together and start our stamping process, then I'm going to also be using my stamping platform. The technique I'm going to use is what I call the smooshing technique, so we will need to have our water available for doing that. And then as we stamp our image, I'm just going to be using the VersaFine Clair Nocturne. To put the project together, I'll just use a little bit of a running tape, but you can also use an adhesive that you've got. One of the ones that I like to use is the Ultra Bond adhesive, but you can choose any paper glue that you like to put your projects together. I will also probably go ahead and be using a little blending brush to just make things look a little bit smoother. All right, so let's get started playing with our project. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is go ahead and make our background. Now, as you can see with this one, I've just used the smooshing technique, and that's what we're going to do for our project. What I'm going to start out doing is I'm going to start out, I think, with the pink, a little bit lighter color first. I'm going to actually take this and just rub some down, which you're not going to be able to see very well with this light of a color, on my work surface. Spritz it a little bit with some water. And then I'm going to take my cardstock and I'm just going to kind of dab it around a little bit to pick up some of that pink color. And again, it's going to be a little bit hard to see with the lighter shade. Now, if you'd like to make it dry a little bit quicker, you can take your drying tool or your heat tool. Let's dry that up just a little bit so we can move on to our next color pretty quickly. All right, and so I know you can't see pink very well, but we'll see it a little bit better with our darker colors. So we've just got some of that kind of splotched on our little card stock right there. Now if you'd like to, you can wipe up your other color, or you can let them blend together. Either way works. Now we're going to move on to our peacock feathers. And again, I'm just going to put some of the peacock feathers down on my work surface. Spritz it with some water. And smoosh around to get a little bit of an addition of color on there. Again, I'll just dry it up just a little bit. If you get some places that you don't like that are a little dark, just dab them out. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and put just a little tiny bit down there at the bottom. Alright, now wipe that up and we'll go to our pine needles. Again, same process. Now pine needles is a little bit darker. Might not need quite as much smooshing with that. We'll just do a little dab here and there. That's a little bit drier than I want. So we'll just add some in. Until we get the look that we really would like to get. I think I'm going to add just a little bit more of the peacock feathers. Get a little more of the bluish shade in there. All right. So once you've got it to look a little bit like you want, I always like to kind of then end up smoothing it out, I guess you might call it, or blending it so that I feel like it really goes together well. So I'm actually going to take a little bit of my Kitchen Flamingo, and I'm just going to blend some across the surface. I'm going to do that just because it gives a little bit more of the pink. The pink is so light, but I think it adds to the color. It's kind of a little bit of a contrast to the blue and green. There we go. Blend that all together and just create an interesting little piece of background there. And now we're to the point where we are ready to go ahead and start the stamping process. So let me show you how we're going to use the sticky mats in this process. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our stamping pad platform. I have a sticky grid down because I don't like to use magnets. And let me go ahead and turn this just a little bit here. So what we're going to do is we're going to start out by taking our background piece. This is the piece that we will be mounting our design on. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that and lay that down on our stamping platform. Now I don't want to get my ink all over my sticky grid there, so I'm just going to put a little piece of scrap paper down here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my tree and I'm going to lay it how I think I might like it to be. In our original one, I kind of had it way over to the side. I think I'm going to center it just a little bit more. Get a little bit more of the trunk showing on this particular one. So we're just going to lay that down, and I actually will be coming over just a little bit on the side again, so I'm going to put another piece down. Get that centered exactly where I'd like it to be. It's a little on the long side, pull that off. Okay, and now I'm going to ink up my stamp with my VersaFine Clair Nocturne. All right, I've got a little bit of smudge on my stamp. I don't want that to get on my card, so I'm going to wipe that off. And then now I'm going to close my door down and get my impression down onto my little background piece. All right, make sure it comes in full contact. And there we go. Now, with this particular one, we do not want to remove our background piece. All right, so we've got that there. Because what we're going to want to do is we want our top piece to be able to line up. So what I'm going to do is take my piece of the Misty Sticky Matte. There are actually 3 pieces that come in a package when you get this. It's got different markings. For this particular project, it really doesn't matter which size of the markings that you use. So what I'm going to do is take this, and I'm actually going to line it up with the edges, the top edge and the side edge, so that I know that it's well in place. And if you'd like to, I'm always one who's bumping things and everything, as I'm going to go ahead and put just a little piece of tape down so that it doesn't wiggle. But since it's up against the edges, it should be fine. Okay, so then now, what I'm going to do is pull off, that has a little thin film on top of it that protects your sticky side. So I'm going to pull that off, stick that back down. And then you see that it's over the top of my background piece. Now I'm going to center my art piece into the middle of the image that I stamped on the background piece. So what this is going to do is when I now do my stamping again, it's going to line it up so that it stamps exactly where I want it to. Then when we are ready to put it all together, we will have our images lined up and looking exactly how we want them to look. All right, so I've got this where I want it. Again, I'm going to take some paper so that my mat does not get marked up with my ink. I'm going to protect that. So I've put that down. Now, I have not removed my stamp because I want it to be in the exact same spot. So I'm once again going to just ink it up. And now I'm going to stamp the image on top of my background piece that I created. make sure that we're getting good, solid contact. And I actually think I'm going to put just a slight little bit more ink on there. I like my images to be really nice and dark, so let me just kind of add a little more ink. I may end up needing to get a new black ink pad or give it some more ink. There we go. All right, so now I can remove all of these pieces. I can remove my art piece from my Misty little sticky grid here. I'll go ahead and cover that up so that we don't get it all messed up. And then we're going to move on to put our project together. So we can now remove our background piece from the stamp pad. The stamp platform. Alright, set that aside for now. We're not going to need that. There's our background piece. And there's our art piece. So, now we're going to just basically be lining these up. So that we can go ahead and put it together. Now, one of the things that you're probably thinking is, well, why don't you just glue it down and then stamp on top? Well, what I have found is when you have a layer like this, even though it's very thin, when you go to stamp, it's going to leave a white space around when you're trying to stamp across several different layers. So that's why I prefer to do it this way. It just keeps you from having to go back in, say, with a black marker or coloring pencil or something like that, and filling in the white spaces that might go around the edge, because the stamp can't go completely flat against both pieces. So that's why I like to do this technique. All right. So we need to line it up. I think I'm off just a hair. Line up our pieces and press them down. And now you've got your images lined up and looking like they just have flowed over. Actually has the look that you stamped just one time. But this way, like I said, you just don't get that little bit of white edging that shows because your ink couldn't get completely down there with your stamp across the several layers. Now I like to add just a little bit, and as you can see, look what I've done. I've got my hands all dirty. I've got a tiny little mark that showed up on my bookmark, so first thing I'm going to do is clean my fingers off. Now if you do end up getting a little smudge, I have bought this little Tombow sand and rubber eraser, if you can see that very well there. But using the sand side, if you get a little bit of ink on your project, just take the sand side and erase that little bit of ink off of there. There we go. Now, I like to kind of add just a little bit of color around the edge. You don't have to. You can also trim it out a little bit. Oops, there's another little spot. Let's take that off. I have these corner stamps, the punches that I like to use. I'll just go ahead and maybe round the corners a little bit of this particular bookmark. Adds a little bit more interest. And then I'm just going to take my, let's do the peacock feathers. And maybe we'll just do a little dauber. Let's find one here real quick. Let's grab a little dauber here. Get a little ink on it, and then we're just going to kind of flick around the edges. Just to get a little bit of color. Kind of tie it all together. All right. And there you go. There's just a very quick little simple thing that you can do with your scraps. Make a fun little bookmark. These don't take very long to put together, and it helps you to use up those scraps that you might have laying around the house. You can then punch a hole, add a ribbon, whatever it is that you would like to do to finish out your little bookmark. I hope that these tips have been fun for you and that you enjoy taking your scraps and seeing what you can do with them. I want to thank you for watching my video tutorial today, and just remind you to please check out the delbellosdesigns.com website for more video tutorials by the design team. Have a great day.